hello, maggots, ghosts, ghouls, and goblins.
No, it was our cryptid heads. Okay, we have to restart because we're calling them cryptid heads. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Escaping Nightmares, all my little cryptid and heads out there. Here's another video for you. I'm Jess,
I'm Bree.
and today we're going to be reading off some creepy Reddit stories.
We're on Reddit / Nosleep. So I've got some stories I haven't seen posted on the internet yet, since a lot of people like to read these. So hopefully these are new. All right. So the first one I've got is called "I Lived Completely Isolated for Almost a Year and Never Knew." All right. You ready?
Damn.
Hopefully.
Yes.
I had worked construction for the better part of my 20s before the accident. I never had any know-how to get to engineering school like my parents wanted me, but I preferred to work with my hands anyhow. Jobs came and went, contracts ended, and ultimately I always had a site to work or building to put up. When the Whitham Hawthorne Group offered me a foreman position at the construction project of their new headquarters, I accepted in a heartbeat. Job security from a company like WHG and a salary I'd only dreamed of and benefits to match. I thought it would be stupid not to accept. The foundation had barely been poured on the site when the collapse happened. No one knew who exactly was to blame, whether it was surveyors, the engineers, or just some freak accident. But those of us caught in the rubble only had the parent company to point our fingers at. 3 men dead and 13 injured was apparently a serious enough legal threat that William Hawthorne opted to offer us a generous settlement outside of court. You can judge all you want, but my silence was bought. But 6 zeros on a check would buy yours too.
That's true. I hate to say it. With that much money, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I didn't see or hear anything.
I know, right? In this economy, I get it. No judgment. Like,
Also, like we said, I do not judge you, person.
no,
We don't judge you.
definitely not. In addition, they also offered me a systems job. I'd be able to work from home and even a reduced renter's rate at one of their apartment complexes, in a unit that would accommodate the wheelchair I'd been confined to for the rest of my life. Until then, I didn't even know that they owned any residential properties, but the complex looked decent enough on the pamphlet they sent me. After all, I certainly couldn't live alone in my current fourth floor apartment anyway. I don't know why I had trouble reading that. um, I moved in near the beginning of February last year. I won't lie, the adjustment to everything at once hit me a lot harder than it should have. Overnight, I had gone from working outside every day to being restricted to a wheelchair. I was not used to being inside all day long. My hard hat and boots swiped for a work laptop and a filing cabinet. The depression caused by my new situation was only worsened when I got settled in.
But that's horrible because that's literally I couldn't even imagine being outside and used to that kind of line of work or just being outside and being busy and then not even that you're stuck. Your legs don't work anymore, so you can't even go for a walk or do anything. Like it's so much more of a different challenge.
Yeah, no, he's going through it. It was embarrassing how little I owned that would still be practical given my new lifestyle, so it didn't take long for the movers to bring everything over. I was moved in less than a day after I got out of the hospital. The apartment on the first floor unit was the apartment was a first floor unit for obvious reasons. The second and third floors each had units with patio balconies that extended an outcrop over my minuscule fenced yard. As a result, the already tiny windows in my living room barely got any sunlight during the day. Off to the side of my living room, I had a kitchen with lowered countertops and extended storage space on the lower shelves. My bedroom was spacious with a wheelchair, accessible closet, and a tiny room attached to the bathroom. I wish I could say I was thankful, but the accommodations only reminded me that I'd never live the same life again. Please don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely not one of those guys who sees disability as something that makes someone lesser. My aunt was a wheelchair user when I was growing up, and I had an older brother with special needs. Both of them have my respect for as long as they lived. But both of them had died because, in one way or another, they depended on something that couldn't be provided for them. In their old age, my aunt fell out of her chair at home one day and didn't have the arm strength to crawl back up or reach the phone. The medic said that her pets had begun to eat her before she died.
Oh my gosh. I've heard about that.
Yeah.
And I even had like James, my fiance over there, tell me, if you passed away, would your cats eat you? And I like look at my cats and I'm like, I I don't think they would. But then I hear about animals being like, "Oh yeah, they ate their people, they ate their humans." I'm like, that's
I would be,
horrible.
if I'm already dead, I'm okay with my pets eating me. Like, you need to survive. Eat me if you
Yeah.
must. But this says that she was still alive. So her cat or
Like,
dog is
what can
gnawing on her while she's on the ground. She's probably like, oh my God, stop, please. Like, that's terrible.
so
That the
funny.
visual of that. If I'm dead, go ahead and eat me. I don't mind. But if I'm still
Yeah.
alive, please don't be doing that.
Yep, you have Calliope over there. Like you have your dog Calliope, you have Echo.
I have a lot of animals. I would be gone in like a day. My body would be bones. What if she has something weird though? What if she has like an unconventional pet, like a lizard?
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, did she have an anaconda? Those things
Anaconda.
can eat anyone.
Grandma had an anaconda.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't say what kind of pet she had, so who knows? She could have, maybe it was a bunch of birds. What if she got pecked to death by birds?
Here they come.
Oh, it's like that movie. No, that's not good.
Or pigs. Pigs will eat you.
Oh, pig, like a little pot-belly pig that she had running around. That's
Oh,
so
she didn't have
bad.
pigs in her house though.
Me too. But we didn't know her, so you never know.
Yeah, I mean, it said pets, so who
There's
knows?
plural.
It's up to your imagination. Anyway. All right, so grandma got eaten by her pets. That's very sad. Um, my brother ended his life because my parents refused to give him the help he needed. I still won't talk to my family for that. And now, after almost 30 years of independence and ability, it seemed as though every one of my prospects was ripped from me, and I was entirely dependent on the company that had caused it. In short, I was very, very bitter. Oh, in June of that year, it was as hot as it had ever been. But then I'd settled into a dull routine, wake up, do a few arm exercises before I showered, eat breakfast, and then get some of my work done before lunch. What I did could barely qualify as work, but it seemed like the company thought it would be better to have me under NDA and payroll than risk me suing. Once lunch came around, I would check my fridge for groceries and add what I was running low onto my weekly mobile delivery. It was much easier to have someone else get groceries and leave them at my front door. I'd found a routine where I'd honestly never have to leave the apartment. I avoided human interaction those days, so it was easy to stay inside. The only voices I heard for months were my neighbors. From what I could tell, I lived underneath a married couple that never stopped fighting. And in the unit next to me, there was an older woman with at least a couple more cats than our lease allowed. So me, he lived next to one of us.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the one. Like I'm always yelling at mine. I'm like, at least mine have human names. I'm like, I'm pretty sure at this point people think I have, you
Children.
know, children. Of how much I yell at them and I talk to them. Like I'll be like, leave, and then yeah, it's true because I'll be like, leave your sister alone.
We'll be like playing an intense video game or something, and you'll be like, Avery, look, my
I
God,
will be like,
stop it.
Octavian,
Yeah.
stop.
Or we'll just be talking, like just chilling, hanging out, talking, and he'll just be like, Octavian, stop it, phone. You said something crazy one time. You said like, Octavian, stop biting his ass or something.
Yeah, I
What
did
is
that was
going on?
Ryder. I was like, leave his yes up my ass. I'm like, why do you have his fur in your mouth? And he's just running around. I was like, oh my god.
So I know what he's going through. I can hear the cat lady already because I'm that cat lady. Jess is that cat lady.
You yelling at Calliope or Cat.
Yeah. Or Ava or
Amara.
all of my pets, my millions of little critters,
Yeah.
my undisclosed amount of animals. On one particular morning mid-June, as I got out of the shower and dried my head, I opened my eyes to find that the power in my apartment had suddenly gone out. It was inevitable. Everyone on the block had to have their AC units on blast. I finished drying off, and for the first time since I moved in, I rolled over to the curtain sliding door attached to my living room and went into the small yard, where I knew I'd find the breaker box. The outside air was hot and heavy as I watched my toes brush against the grass, but I couldn't feel anything. I noticed that without the noise of the AC units running, it was very, very quiet. Not even the sounds of insects or birds filled the morning air, and for a moment I let the morning sun rest on my face before it would rise behind the patio, overshadowing my yard. For as short as it lasted, the peace that overwhelmed me was blissful. The silence was interrupted by the sound of a sliding glass door above, creaking wood, and the sound of footsteps, but followed by the familiar arguing voices I had grown painfully accustomed to. If you don't want to fix it, then I will. The wife's voice grew louder as she moved above me. I never said I wouldn't do it. I said, give me a damn minute to put my shoes on. Why do you always? I zoned out as their arguing continued. Even the briefest joy was fleeting, I thought as I opened my own fuse box and switched on the breakers. I heard my AC unit work to life outside of my fence, muddying the soundscape once more with its mechanical whine. At least it drowned out the arguing from above. As I struggled to figure out how to wheel back over the lip on the sliding door, I heard the arguing stop and the couple sliding door shut and close above me. I managed to get back inside and hoped I wouldn't have to go out anytime soon. I'm ashamed to admit that was the last time I went outside for months. I had gone no contact with the rest of my family years ago, and what new friends I had lived out of state. I had no reason to go out anymore, so the summer's heat, paired with my depression, only forced me inwards. Wake up, shower, eat breakfast, work all day, sleep.
That's so sad. But I feel like that's adult life.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's like the friends you make up until maybe mid 20s. That I feel like for the most part, those are all the friends you're gonna get. Like besides that, you might get a couple triple in once you get older, but it's almost close to impossible.
Yeah, and then this guy's suffering from depression too, so he has friends, but he's not reaching out to anybody because,
Yeah.
depression makes you, yeah,
Feel alone.
and he's getting used to being paralyzed. Like he hasn't like come to terms with the fact that he's paralyzed either. So like he's
So
grappling with coming to terms with the fact that he's paralyzed and can't really work, and then just the depression of going through that and, you know, being alone in the
yeah.
apartment and all that. Even the arguments upstairs and the occasional meow from the unit next to me became monotonous. I drowned out as much as I could, the same voices, the same fights, the same cats misbehaving day in and day out. Jessica.
Hey, you know what? I have sometimes I get annoyed very quickly. As I tell James, I'm like, I am stuck home all day with the gremlins. So when I come home and he tries to be the good parent, giving Octavian his screen time and Ryder his extra treats and Avery all her attention, I'm like, I'm with them all day. He's like, you yell at them a lot. I'm like, well, you hang out with them all day and you tell me how you feel.
He just butters him up while you're the authoritarian parent for your cats.
I am.
So this guy says, in fact, as much as I tried to ignore their fighting, sometimes I couldn't help but listen in. I would too. Be nosy. It's fun.
Yeah, it's like the drama you don't have to pay for.
The woman who lived above me, whose name I gathered to be Claire, was seemingly unemployed. She rarely spoke, unless it was to accost her husband for wrongdoing or to complain. Her husband, whose name was Jason maybe? They seemed to have some anger issues, but seemed more defensive than aggressive. Cold and distant, paired with irritable and sensitive, a perfect storm. I never gathered the cat lady's name. Instead, I became very familiar with Greta, Priscilla, and Tom. Every day the woman would try to quiet Tom for crying too loud for food, and sometimes in the afternoon she would accost Greta and Priscilla for fighting over a nap spot in the sunbeam. Having natural light enter the room sounded like heaven. So the author of this book, or the author of this story, definitely has cats.
But that layout sounds exactly like how I am all the time with mine. Because Ryder always wants treats. I'm always telling him no treats, and then Octavian is messing with Avery, so I'm always yelling at him to leave her alone. And then she does something, and I'm always like, "Look at how cute you are! You're the cutest thing in the world!" And she does stuff to terrorize him. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Maybe, hopefully, this guy was not our neighbor below us, and he just made up different names for.
This author's actually your neighbor below you, and this person's writing about you.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm sorry. I was like, it wasn't my fault, but okay.
God damn it, this lady and her cats will shut up. That's so funny. So this story's about Jessica, unfortunately. The voices were my only human connection. It was mid-September, and when I attempted to clear my throat of my developing allergies, that I realized I hadn't heard my own voice in months. I cried myself to sleep that night, feeling more alone than I had ever been. This is really sad. By October, the isolation became unbearable. I found myself listening to the voices more than have ever wanted to, quieting my apartment as much as possible to catch them when I could. The same fights, complaints, meows, they became my friends, my comfort. One night, out of some sense of desperation, or maybe just a form of entertainment for myself, I started responding. It wasn't much at first, just a quiet whisper in response to Claire's complaints. When I heard her hiss, "You never listen to me," I whispered, "I'm listening." When Jackson or Jason or whatever his name is sighed and muttered, "Christ, I can't do this," I chucked in and stuttered out a quiet me either. I don't know why I kept it up. Maybe just to hear my own voice. Maybe in a pathetic way, it made me feel like I was connecting with someone. I knew it was stupid and illogical, but it made things feel just a little less empty. It became kind of a game for me. Every night I sat in the dim light of my apartment, slipping from one drink to many, and I listened. I let their words become our words. The fights, the meows, the mild chit chat. When Claire snapped, "You never take me seriously anymore," I whispered, "Of course I do." When the old woman yelled out at Tom, scolding him for knocking something over, I grinned and mumbled, "Bad cat." It was more than a game. It was all I had. Then a week after I
That's so
start.
sad.
Oh, yeah, that is really sad. Warning, the story is a little sad. Then, about a week after I'd started, I noticed it for the first time. Claire had just shouted, "For once in your life, admit that I might be right." I responded instinctively, "Why should I when you're wrong?" Before I could finish my words, from above, her husband's voice exclaimed to her, "But why should I when you're wrong?" I paused. For a minute or so, I sat intently listening. I knew her words sounded familiar. Had I heard them in the same argument before? I brushed it off at first. Of course it sounded familiar. I'd be listening to their fights for months. I probably heard them bring up the same talking points 100 times. Often enough that, subconsciously, I probably just knew what he was likely to say. But then, the next day, it happened again. "Is it that hard for you to get my car's registration done? It's been overdue for almost a week," Claire snapped. And I knew for a fact that I had heard that before. Not just something like it, those exact words, in that exact tone, in that exact order. That in itself could have been explainable, except for the first time I'd noticed it had been in August. Her registration hadn't been expired for a week at that point. It had been almost 2 months. I turned off my AC and listened harder, my heart thumping against my ribs. "If it's no big deal, why can't you get it done for me?" There. She'd said that part too, I thought. I swallowed and realized my mouth had gone dry, my palms beginning to get a cold sweat as I grappled with the feeling that they had said this all before, many times. Coincidence, that's all it was. Maybe their fights really were that predictable. Predictable. I told myself to ignore it, but I couldn't. That night I lay awake in bed, staring at my ceiling, my ears straining to pick up whatever was said above me. I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid, but something felt wrong. The next day, I kept notes of what little I could hear around me on my computer. In the past, I paid little attention to what was being said and when, but on that day, I was meticulous. I kept every fan off, I didn't run my laundry, I skipped my shower. I did everything in my power to keep my home as quiet as possible, maintain the ability to transcribe every word being said. From the old woman next to me, 8:15 a.m. "Oh my, Tommy, be quiet. I fed you already." From upstairs, 8:17, Claire on the phone, "Yes, he left for work. No, it's just me here until he comes home from lunch." 12:32, upstairs again. "Jason, I told you not to slam the front door when you come in. You scare the hell out of me every time." All throughout the day, everything I could struggle to make out, I took a note of. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I had my notes and I had the same time.
That's so weird. So like at this point, I almost feel like it's like setting up like it's a recording, like it's some weird Twilight episode.
I was confused when I was reading it. I was like, that's really strange. Um, so he's taking all his notes of all the times and what they're saying. He said, "So I showered and made my way to the middle of the apartment to listen once again. I sat eagerly waiting, checking my watch and waiting for signs of life. Then, from the apartment adjacent to mine, at exactly 8:15 in the morning, the woman began to speak. "Oh, Tommy Tom, be quiet. I fed you already." 8:17, "Yes, he left for work. No, it'll just be me here until he comes home from lunch." And more, all morning long. I listened in awestruck silence at my entire day's transcription being reenacted word for word, minute by minute. By the time 12:32 rolled around and Claire complained about the door slamming, I was sickened to realize that on neither day nor any other had I actually ever heard the door slam shut.
That's so weird.
As if the same script was being read over and over, just muffled enough and just faint enough to keep me from noticing. I needed air, so I did something I hadn't done in months. I left my apartment. I struggled to wheel out to the complex's courtyard, squinting against the sunlight, the French air strange but refreshing against my skin. The apartment building wrapped around in a neat uniform U shape, with a mirroring building just across the narrow parking lot. The second and third floor balconies of each building were stacked like dull concrete shelves above my head. I looked up at the couple's unit just above mine. The small windows had their blinds wide open, but I couldn't make out any movement inside. I wheeled turned to look at the next apartment next to mine where the old woman lived. The blinds open, but same, no movement inside. I realized quickly that every unit in my building and the building across the way was the same. Blinds open, no signs of life. I sat there for nearly an hour watching. Not a single shadow moved behind the windows, no doors open, no one entered or left the building. The silence pressed against me as I realized that not only were there no people visible to me, there was no movement at all. No birds, no cars, no distant voices from other tenants. Just the wind and the faint mechanical hum of the AC units. Living isolated will do strange things to your mind. It'll make you keep track of things that social norms would normally remind you of, but it also makes you ignore glaring truths right under your nose. It wasn't until I sat there, utterly confused, that I suddenly realized that I had never seen my neighbors, not once.
Say like literally, it reminds me almost like I said, either Twilight Zone or Black Mirror. Like almost like he had like record like they had recordings. I know it's be conspiracy like, but like had recordings of just kind of like things on to keep him entertained.
How weird. Like, could you imagine if some company like did that? Like, oh, well, we don't want you to sue us because we paralyzed you. So we're going to put you in this like lonely apartment complex where no one else lives. It's just you. And then like play recordings of people. Like, how weird.
Yeah, because it's one of those things like being in my apartment complex. Like, don't get me wrong, it's usually not that much heavy activity, but still, like, if I went outside and at least looked, I could probably see someone in the window, or even if I was in the lobby, I would at least probably see at least one person. Like, that's crazy. This poor guy.
I know. I would definitely notice because my area is so loud. Like the planes, the cars, the people walking by, it's so busy. It would be really eerie for me to have like no sounds in my area. Like me and Byron went on vacation to Blue Lake. You step out in the lake when it's dark and all you can hear is the crickets. And it was like creepy on its own just because it was so silent and I wasn't used to it. And I would go
Like,
absolutely insane too, like not having anybody to talk to.
mm-hmm. Oh no, 100%. Like, I honestly feel like that's why I get it, why my cats are so human like you can't say kitty kitty and they'll come to you. Like you actually have to talk to them like people. And it's because that's like any every for the, I moved so much that I started to just talk to them about telling them about like my day.
Yeah.
So especially like Octavian, I could sit there and tell him about my day. I feel like he has a lot of shit always say back to me because he always meows.
You and I definitely have a bad habit of like speaking to our animals like we're having a conversation with them. We probably
Yeah.
look insane to some people. Yeah, like my cat will meow. She'll be like meow and I'll be like, "What do you mean?" Like and she'll be like meow and I'll be like, "No, that did not happen." My boyfriend's like, "What the
Yeah.
fuck?"
Well, and that's what I'll do with Octavian. Like Octavian will say something, he'll be like, "Matt," I'm like, "I'm not putting on the, I'm not. You don't need screen time." He'll be like, "Matt," I'm like, "Yeah, you already watch enough." And then I tell people, I'm like, I think in the funny part, so you all know that we're not crazy, is like. But the thing is, it's like you get so used to their routine and what they're always complaining about and what they always want. It just becomes first nature. Like you're like, okay, their food dish is full, water dish is full. I'm like, obviously they're probably complaining because they want to go outside or they want something.
Oh yeah, you learn their meows too. Like I know when Lily has a very specific meow, it's like this panicked like I don't know how to describe it, but it's very specific and I know when she does that meow that she has poop stuck to her butt. And I'm like, "Oh no, do I have to get that turd off your butt?" That's
That's
probably
hilarious,
so gross. People are like, "Oh god." Anyway, we're leaving this in the
right?
video.
I know. I think we should be. People need to know that we understand. We understand about making
It's
alternatives
it's
to
like
get by.
here's your scary story and stories about our cats.
Hey, they're gonna be watching our videos. They're gonna know sooner or later that we talk about them a lot.
Yeah, they'll learn. Not leaving their doors, not in the parking lot, not on their balconies, despite hearing their voices out there almost every night. I hadn't even spoken to anyone in person when I moved in. I filled out my paperwork online, and I had been driven here by a company vehicle when the movers said they brought everything over. A sick feeling crept into my stomach. I had lived here for 8 months. 8 months of hearing these people argue, of hearing the woman behind me talk to her cats, and I'd never once seen another human being in the flesh. That's creepy.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
The implication had barely begun to set in, almost in reaction to my realization. The blinds in the apartment next to mine suddenly closed shut. They were followed by only a few seconds later by those belonging to units upstairs in almost a cascade. All of the open blinds for every unit started to close. I moved faster than I ever had in my chair. I wheeled quickly out of the courtyard and into the parking lot. Surely there had to be a leasing office somewhere nearby. So, like, as soon as he realizes that, like, all of the units look exactly the same and all the windows are open, but there's nobody inside, all of the building's blinds close.
That's so weird.
That would freak me out.
In that moment, I feel like how he got that settlement, I would move. I know that'd be hard, but there's me. I'm like, I'm good. I got money. I'm moving. Like, there has to be other place because that's. I almost feel like that's one of those like test subjects. Like literally, he's being a test subject, and they're watching him.
Oh, they're like testing him for like how crazy can we make him when we put him in isolation or something.
Exactly.
As I reached the lot, I looked both ways and saw only rows of identical buildings and the blind on each slowly closing. The movement rippled away from me for what seemed like miles of units. I had never realized the scale of the complex. As I hustled to find any building that stuck out, I noticed that I saw absolutely nobody. Empty car par Empty cars parked in lots, bicycles leaning against fences, varying patio furniture, and even children's toys left outside on the sidewalk as though they'd be returning shortly. All signs of life, but without any life to be seen. So it's like staged. They like staged it.
Yeah.
After about 20 minutes of searching for any indication of an office, I returned to my home. My arms were exhausted from moving more than I had in a long time, and I knew I couldn't keep searching forever. I made it back to my unit not long after, with the surrounding windows blocked from view by my blinds. My home felt bleak, solitary among the rest of them. It didn't help that I knew that somehow I really was the only one here. I made it back inside and closed the front door behind me. Not 1 second later, as I turned to go to my room, a chime startled me, and I realized that my doorbell had been rung. I immediately I would be like, there's a fucking monster outside my door.
Yeah, right? I'm like, oh crap, they spotted me. They're about to take me away to a different experimental place. Like,
It's
what?
it's a monster or the men in black and they're here to collect.
Yep, he found out. He about fucked up. They're like, we gotta take you.
They're like, wow, 8 months and you didn't notice? You've gone perfectly insane for me to suck out your brain now.
Oh my god. You're so bad.
I immediately turned back to reopen the door, but outside there was no one to be seen. Just my weekly grocery delivery. So it was
That's
this
so
grocery.
sad.
We would be freaking out, be like, oh my god, it's a monster. It's fucking DoorDash. But he didn't see the guy. So the groceries got delivered, but he sees nobody. So like that guy dropped him and was gone.
Maybe because he's realized the same thing. He's like, this is weird. This is the only dude that's here, and he's probably a serial killer.
The following days were a blur. Had there actually been anyone outside to look at my apartment, they would have seen me wildly going from window to window, peering through the blinds like a tweaker waiting for a package. I don't blame you. I'd be doing the same thing. I get it.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
For about a week, all of the arguing, the meowing, the idle conversations that had been repeatedly permeating my walls went absolutely silent. Whatever was going on, it caught wind of my curiosity and stopped, as though to gather itself and prepare it must have, since when the sounds of the human voices and interactions reappeared a week later, they had changed. New arguments, new discussions, even a new cat supposedly added to the bunch. So it needed like a week
Like,
to come up with a script.
yeah, I was just gonna say that. That's so freaking weird that all of a sudden they switch everything. Like, actually, okay, I take that back. You know what this reminds me of? I know exactly what it reminds me of. The Truman Show.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It like 100% reminds me of the Truman Show when he honestly did not know and he just went on his normal day, even though he saw people still went on his normal day life, and then he little by little started to realize like, wait, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense.
They should make like a full balls
Horror.
out horror Truman Show.
Honestly, they should, and hands down, I would watch it because it is true when you think of the large schemes of it. It's just like this guy.
The second day that the voices were back, I noticed that they were different from the day before. The conversations were new the next day as well, and the day after that. For 7 days, I almost allowed myself to believe that I'd been imagining things. I'd even begun to hear the occasional car outside, slowly creeping past. Maybe something I somehow hadn't noticed before? On the 8th day of the return of the noises, however, my heart sank. Repeated phrases, returning arguments, and interactions that I had already hastily taken note of the week prior. The next day followed suit. They'd learned, but only a little bit. Whatever loop was being played for me now was a whole week's worth of audio, not just a day's worth. Even the passing cars returned exactly at the same times I'd taken note of the week prior. But now that I was looking for them, I could tell that they were driverless. 2 weeks had passed since I left my apartment, and a thought occurred to me: what would happen if I tried to interrupt the routine? I checked my notes of the prior 2 weeks and began to prepare a plan. The next day, the old woman would chastise her cats for ganging up on the new kitten at exactly 9:13 and 3 seconds. However, I would knock on her door at 9:13, hopefully forcing whatever charade was about to be performed for me to have to adjust. The next morning, I prepared myself. I shaved for the first time in weeks, and I made sure I looked as presentable as possible. I couldn't give any reason or excuse to not open the door for me. I picture this guy looking like, um,
This guy looks like a freaking lumberjack, like Wolverine.
I feel like he looks like, oh God, Tom Hanks
Yeah, from Castaway.
from Castaway. He's just all rugged and crazy looking, like,
Or freaking Robin Williams from Jumanji.
oh yeah. He doesn't even have clothes on. He's wearing like jungle leaves and shit.
Yeah, he's like, this lady won't open the door if she looks out and she freaking sees Castaway Jumanji man out there. But she might if he sees a nice sailor and a nice adventure man. Yeah, I hope somebody opens up this door.
I waited in front of the door for about 2 minutes, my eyes locked onto my wristwatch and ears as alert as they had ever been. The very second my little Casio, the very second my little, I guess that's a watch? The very second my little watch turned to 9:13, I knocked as loudly as I could without sounding aggressive, but was sure to knock in less than 3 seconds. In less than 3 seconds, it would take her to stop speaking. I waited with bated breath for longer than I think I should have. 3 seconds felt like a minute, and by the time an actual minute rolled around, hours had gone by in my mind. I was satisfied enough with my ability to interrupt the cycle. As I turned my chair to return back home, something spoke to me from behind the door. Who is it? 3 words, 3 new words, spoken undeniably in response to me. But whatever was speaking to me was not an old woman. I didn't know if I could even call it human. The words felt disjointed, as though stitched together from other phrases and distorted in a rushed attempt to sound coherent. So it sounds like it's being stitched together like it doesn't know how to speak.
Oh, so it's like how we almost do if you do, yeah, you're like editing, but they're editing it so it's just you hear those phrases that make sense. That's so weird. Because if it's different, there's different people. There's the old lady, there's the angry married couple, and like those are all different voices. So like you would hear the difference between an old lady speak and a young married couple probably around like our age.
So he says, I barely had time to collect my thoughts before the voice called out again. The words, the same, but the cadence and tone shifted, attempting to emulate normal speech. It sounded more natural, but it was still undeniably inhuman. Who is it? I'm your neighbor from next door. Who is it? The voice called once more, and to my horror, the door cracked open. I braced myself to see something horrible waiting for me inside, some mockery of a human been waiting to lunge at me from the darkness, but darkness, inky black and concealing, was all that greeted me from behind the door. The door opened in full, and as what little sunlight could poured inside. There was absolutely no one inside. Absolutely no movement, no sign of life save for the voice that called out from the doorway, now in perfect form. Who is it? I peered my head inside the doorway. As I did, I felt myself through a threshold. As I peered inside the doorway, as I did, I felt myself through a threshold, icy and cold. Oh, so he feels like he feels like he's walking into another realm. I think that's what that's supposed to mean. It's icy and cold. Worse was the feeling of loneliness that seemed to inject itself into my veins. In all my months being alone, I had never quite felt it so intensely as when I crossed through this door. As I entered the living room, only one thing about the otherwise unremarkable home stood out. I cannot believe he's going into this house.
Well, the funny thing is, I like how you thought about how I can't believe he goes in the house. I'm thinking to myself, why isn't a cat ran out yet? Like, why hasn't
You're
he
worried about the
seen these
cats.
cats? Yeah, I'm like, why hasn't he seen these cats? Like, I know, don't get me wrong, I know mine would hide, but you would still at least probably see a glimpse of their tail or something.
So when he walks in the door, a wheelchair fallen over to its side lay in the middle of the floor. I couldn't see anything around it, but it was surrounded by sounds of slow, methodical chewing and the occasional tearing of flesh, partnered with a hungry meow. I left immediately.
What the, what the hell? Like, so,
So like remember in the beginning when he said my grandma? Was it his grandma or his aunt? Somebody had fallen out
oh
of their
my gosh,
wheelchair
yeah.
and got eaten by their cats or their pets.
Yes, I was like his aunt that got eaten by her pets, but we didn't quite know exactly what pet she had.
So
That's
it's kind of like projecting his memories back at him. Like, okay, you want to come in here? Like, we'll show you what happened to your aunt, you know?
oh my gosh, yeah.
Weird. I wouldn't have went in there. I'd been too scared.
I would have knocked on the door. Actually, I take that back. I'm the kind of person I know I would go in there just because of
You
my
would.
curiosity.
Yeah, I
I
know
already
you would.
know. I know I would. I'm the kind of person it says keep out, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go in just because I want to see. That's why you'll survive and I would die.
Yeah, I'd be like, no thanks. I'm not going in there. After that day, a pre the pre-written schedules changed more often and far more sporadically. Sometimes I would go days without hearing anything. Sometimes entirely new arguments would appear in days I thought I documented. And occasionally, the cars would pass by, making a turn they hadn't before. Every action was hollow, though. Every voice was attached to nobody real, and I knew that much for certain. I started to review my options. I hadn't seen another human being for the better part of a year by now, and I doubted that things were going to change unless I somehow got out of this complex. But where would I go? There was no one to come pick me up. I hadn't opened my work laptop in weeks, and I knew no one in whatever city I was in. Did I even know where I was at? I vaguely remembered the offer after the accident and the company men coming to get me from my hospital, and my mind struggled to remember the actual order of events that had led me to living here. The more I puzzled it over, the less it made sense. As far as I could piece together, I had been in the accident, had some suits visit me in the hospital when I woke up. They explained vaguely what happened and that the company wanted to avoid legal troubles, so they passed me over and checked the new job offer as well as the pamphlet for the apartment. I remember signing my lease information online from the hospital, and then I remember being brought directly here. Had it been that immediate? Had I been in such a daze that I didn't recognize the strangeness of the situation? My thoughts were interrupted by a knock at my door. Not a doorbell, a knock. 3 solid knocks, echoing through my apartment. A chill ran far down my spine as I had a feeling. Wait. A chill ran far down my spine as I still had feeling. What? Oh, I don't know what that means. As I slowly began to wheel myself, so he can't feel his whole spine. So the chill ran partially down his spine, is what he's trying to say.
That poor guy.
Poor
Okay.
guy. Yeah. I began to wheel myself towards the door. I stopped in the kitchen to grab a knife on my way. Who's there? I asked, my voice tinged with panic, but there was no answer for a moment. Then slowly and meticulously, from the other side, I heard my own voice, broken and stitched together, call back to me. I'm, I'm your neighbor from next door. I flung the door open.
I have so many thoughts and so many like scenarios running through my head right now. I'm just like, What's happening?
Yeah. I flung the door open, brandishing the large steak knife out into the open air. I couldn't see anyone in front of me, but I knew that something was there. I sat, wildly swinging the knife in front of me. So he's just fucking slashing. The voice for called to me again from right in front of my face. So there's nothing in front of him. He's slashing the knife around like a maniac, and it just says, "I'm your neighbor from next door." It's fucked up. There was a shimmer in the air, a glint of sunlight, a distortion outlining a shape that was unambiguously humanoid, and I was entering the threshold of the door, slowly creeping towards me. This was my only chance. With all the strength I could muster, I hurled the knife towards the no one in my entryway. As I passed through the glimmering shape, as I entered its cold form, I only ever felt once shot through my veins. So he's feeling the same feeling he felt when he walked through the threshold of his cat lady's door is what I'm getting from this. The icy sting sought to freeze me in place, and the empty solitude that pressed in around me should have taken all the steam out of me. But I didn't let it. I could feel it now. It was real. It could be escaped. I made my way through the form, and as I looked back, it turned towards me, its non existent unbeing making haste to attempt to swallow me up once more. I was faster than it, though, and as I turned the corner out of the courtyard into my street, I forced myself to ignore the burning in my arms, and I kept pushing myself forward. As I rolled as fast as I could, I looked at the identical buildings surrounding me. Through every blind, through every cracked door, there was nothing and no one watching me. I felt eyes, hungry and jealous, piercing me through all sides. No one was trying to keep me here, but I wouldn't give it. What? Oh, the no one. So the thing after him was trying to keep me here, but I wouldn't give it the satisfaction. I caught glimpses from my peripheral vision of glimmering nothings, clambering out of doors and emerging from parked cars. I felt chills running through my body once more as I must have passed through a group of them, their arms outstretched, attempting to grab me. Whatever they were or weren't, I didn't think that they could touch me, but I could feel them. More and more of them piled out of front doors, springing towards me. The air around me began to ripple as they amassed in numbers. It reminded me of waves of heat emanating from roofs of cars under the hot sun. No one's fingers clawed at me as I pushed through them. Voice cracked, wiped, stitched together nonsense surrounding me with their fractured cries. After what felt like an eternity through the shimmering crowd that wasn't there, I saw what I had been longing for. The end. I had reached the edge of the complex. It wasn't anything special as far as I could tell. No barrier or wall that would hinder my escape. I pushed myself harder and faster, then more exhausted than my arms. Wait, what am I reading? I pushed myself harder and faster than my exhausted arms should have allowed. Okay. But every icy claw had passed through my blood, renewed my vigor. The moment I crossed the threshold, the screams collapsed into silence. The air behind me felt full. Not empty. No empty frozen fingers or warped voices. No nothing. I didn't dare look back, though. Not yet. I looked out ahead of me. I had never been more relieved to see the shitty Dollar General in my life. I cried sweet tears of joy when I laid eyes on a struggling jogger, fat, sweaty, but human. Me. He
Right.
found me.
He saw us running by, and he's like, "Yes, that's the view I wanted to see. You made my day." And we're just like, "Oh God, we're
I
dying."
know. And I love how he's so excited to see a Dollar General. He's like, oh, thank God. A Dollar
Dollar
General.
General.
I'd be wanting to see a 7-Eleven. I want to get my snacks on.
I know. I'd want taquito.
I want a taquito. I don't want a buffalo roller.
Oh, those are so good.
We're big fans, big fans. 7-Eleven shout out.
Oh, we are.
I rolled over the crosswalk and came to rest at the bus stop across the street. I finally let my aching arms rest and they collapsed to my sides. I sat for a moment, tears rolling down my cheeks, and reeking of sweat and body odor. I must have looked insane, even to the struggling homeless man who sat on the bench. But I didn't care. He never, he would never know it, but I loved him simply for being there. I eventually found my strength and wearily turned my wheelchair towards a complex that had entrapped me for a year of my life. I don't think I'll ever be able to explain what I saw before me, so he's looking out at where his complex was. But Before me lay an unassuming dirt lot, no larger than a football field. Unattended construction equipment lay dormant, and a porta potty lay toppled and vandalized in the back corner. Surrounding the perimeter of the lot was a chain link fence. A land development sign stood in the perimeter, its red letters crisp and clean, as if freshly posted. Beneath, an artist's rendering of a sleek new building, and the words, coming soon, Lamb Hawthorne Research Complex.
So they literally put him in a complex that wasn't even completed yet. It was just his unit.
So it sounds like you were partially right because it says Liam Hawthorne Research Complex. Remember you were saying maybe they're experimenting on him?
Yeah.
But it's also like, was he in like a different realm? Was he dead? Is he dead? Is he a ghost? All right. Well, Jessica's computer died, so she is joining us on my phone. If I can get my phone to work. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
So what I was going to say is how he said it was a research, maybe it was an experiment and they knew the stuff that had triggered him in his past, so therefore they put him into a room that was only completed his unit and they played those recordings and they just put them in different voices because they were like, this is something that's really going to mess with him and he's not going to think anything of it because he's already trying to adjust to this new world. So he's not going to be thinking about this stuff is related just like home.
Yeah. Yeah, the ending leaves it up to the reader to decide, like, did he hallucinate the whole thing? Was he in a different dimension? Were they, since it's going to be a research center, maybe they were doing research on him there? Maybe there's like something underground or who knows, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like a psych, like just like a psych ward or some kind of like how they have those rehabilitate those can't think of the exact word that they're kind of like therapy when you have to relive through something to help you get through it.
Mm, yeah.
But
Because even then, he says after the accident, he doesn't like remember even how he got there. So I think you were
yeah,
right. I think they were experimenting on him somehow, you know.
because of course, yeah, 'cause, like exactly that. He has no idea. He remembers the accident. He remembers the people coming, and then next thing you know, they're like, "Here you are at your new place." And I feel like in any other normal setting, you would at least it would take more time, and you would have more people sending you there. I understand the leasing online because that makes it easier for him because he's freshly just paralyzed, like something new and stressful for him. So stuff like that makes sense, but not to have any contact at all. Like, how did he even start the DoorDash thing? Like, if he never left, it's like
Maybe the
he might have
researchers, maybe the researchers were doing it. Who knows?
it.
It's up in the air. We don't know. It has a very,
Right.
very strange ending. It could be
Exactly.
any of your interpretation of it. It sounds like it's, who knows? Who knows? But this
Exactly.
was called I lived completely isolated for almost a year and never knew. This is by Noblecube on Reddit. So he wrote this. He says, I'm new to writing. If you like one of my stories, please check out my WordPress where I have everything posted together. So he's new to writing. That was really good. That was really good for somebody who's new to writing. I liked it.
Oh, yeah, I liked it too. Like it was detailed, and he kept at least he kept me engaged and actually had me thinking about a lot of different stuff. And
Yeah,
I was like, wait,
I
what?
like
Like scared and
I like the creepy visuals too. Like he kind of portrayed, like this liminal space of this apartment complex and then all of the like blinds shutting in unison and like it was all very subtle but still creepy and then even the ending is very up there and up for interpretation and debate, which I kind of like, it's ambiguous. Ambiguous, is that the right word?
I think so.
Okay. Amphibious, it's very amphibious. All right. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed our story. We'll have another one soon because everybody loves Reddit stories, and I have more stuff to read to Jessica. And then Jessica's also going to write some stories for me in a later video for some of my art, which will be fun. We'll see how good Jessica is at writing. We'll judge her harshly. Wait, we won't bully Jessica. We love Jessica, but she's going to write some stories. She's going to read them. Until next time.
Until next time, thanks for listening on this recording from my computer I just say adios, amigos.
Adios. All right. Well, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.